You're Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Mark and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651-645-2922 or visit www.milburn.com. Welcome back, everybody, to You're Free to Go. We're excited to have you here today for what episode is this, Mark?
This is 4.
Number 4, episode number 4. We're enjoying it, and we're just going to keep rocking and rolling, and next thing you know, we'll be on episode 400. That'll be fun. Mark, the last time we ended our episode, you said something that I thought about it all night, and I couldn't wait to get back here today to hear about it. You said you were in a trial, your client was being prosecuted, and at the same time that he was being prosecuted, the government was using him as an undercover witness of some sort. I got to hear about this.
Okay, well, this is one of the wildest cases I've been involved in. I had a client, of course, we're not using real names. Teddy Sharp, we'll call him.
I like that. Okay.
Teddy owned a demolition company, a large demolition company that would literally demolish buildings, racetracks, giant structures. And, you know, for each job, he would hire a lot of people to work, to clear up the mess. He'd have a lot of workers. And I don't know how it started, but according to the government, Teddy was approached by a group of South Florida drug dealers who saw an opportunity to launder money through Teddy's company. And the way, according to the government's case, it worked was they would give Teddy a large amount of cash, because they had cash in their business, and Teddy, in turn, would give them checks as though he's buying goods from them. They formed some fictitious company that supposedly sold building supplies or materials or excavation materials, and he would give him a check. And for every dollar of cash they gave him, he would give him a check for like 70 cents. So, for example, on $1 million of cash, he'd wind up making like a $300,000 profit. And he'd have all this cash. And what did he do, according to the government, with this cash? Instead of having to hire workers that he paid payroll tax, he would just give them cash. These people didn't have to declare taxes. He saved a lot of money in terms of his cost of doing business. And at the same time, he had a lot of profit. Right. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit.
I'm always curious, you know, how long our clients are able to pull things like this off before getting caught. So was that going on for a while?
It was going on for a couple of years.
Wow. Yeah.
And one of the drug dealers involved, is typically what happens, got caught, got jammed up, as they say,
right,
and saw as his only way out to cooperate with the government. And one of the first things he did was he told them about what they were doing with Teddy.
Right.
So, of course, Teddy gets arrested, charged with money laundering. It's a big case. And he is absolutely adamant that he wasn't involved. And as it turns out, we went to trial. And it was a very, very difficult case to try. But we had this trial going. And on, I'd say, about the third or fourth day of what was going to be a multi-week trial in federal court.
Before the trial, why did it go to trial? In other words, was there a plea offer that was just unacceptable? Was the plea offer reasonable, but your client just absolutely insisted he was innocent and he's not going to accept any deal and he wants to go to trial?
Well, it's interesting because there are a lot of variables in those situations. In this particular case, the government wasn't offering him any reasonable deal. And the only reasonable deal he could have gotten is if he was cooperating. And Teddy wasn't cooperating, wasn't going to snitch on anybody. So Teddy had no choice but to go to jail, because if he just pled guilty, he would have faced still an enormous sentence.
Right. Yeah, most of our clients don't want to snitch. They don't want to flip on anybody. So they get to a point where they have the choice to make. Do I go to trial? Do I accept the plea offer? Or do I snitch? And typically they do not want to snitch.
And as a practical matter, sometimes there are good reasons. Sometimes it's an issue of morality. Sometimes it's just an issue of safety.
Right.
And I guess in Teddy's situation, he felt it was wise to go to trial.
Not only his safety, but even his family.
Exactly.
At times, my clients are concerned about their family's safety.
Exactly. So what happened is we're on like the third or fourth day of trial, and I get there early in the morning before the prosecutors and the agents and even the judge taking the bench.
Right. People don't realize when we're in trial, it's a 20-hour day
Oh
for
my
us.
God, it's
They think we're in
you
court.
can't do anything else.
Right. They think we're in court from 8:30 to
No.
5:30. No.
You can't do anything.
We are
else.
working till midnight, and we're up at a couple hours later. Like,
I've even had court days that I've had multicolored shoes on. I've
Yeah,
had
right.
brown and black or socks
Right.
not matching because all I'm doing is thinking about the
right,
case.
everything else is on the back burner.
That's right.
All focused on trial.
So what happened is we're in court very early. Teddy was there. I'm going through papers, getting ready for that day's cross-examination of an important witness. And I see out of the back of my eye, in the corner, two young guys approaching him. And I just happened to notice there were two young black guys. And they approached him, and I just assumed because they were young guys that maybe they were workers or somebody he knew. And he talked to them for a second, and then he went outside the courtroom. And then the prosecutor and the agents came in, and they set up their table. And then, just as Teddy's walking back in the room, the judge is taking the bench. And Teddy goes over to me and he says, I got to talk to you. It's really important. You can't believe what just happened. I said, Teddy, hold off. Judge is on the bench. We got to start. Judge brings in the jury. And we go on for about an hour or two. And I keep noticing my client's very nervous. Finally, we take a break. And judge gets off the bench. And I say, okay, what is it? He says, you're not going to believe it. These two guys, they came in. They told me they had somebody on the jury, and if I wanted, they could fix the case for me. They
Wow.
could fix the jury.
And
At a
he-
minimum, they could get a hung jury because this person would vote against guilty. Maybe this person could convince other people. Maybe they could pay other people. Who knows?
Did
And
you
he
get the
gave-
impression he knew who those guys were? Or they're
No, he said he never met them before.
interesting.
And
This is stuff movies are made of, right?
Exactly.
In real life, though.
And
for us.
apparently they gave him a card. And the card just had a name on it, which I don't remember till today. It was probably a fictitious name, and a phone number. And he gave him a card, and they told him to call him. Now, here I am hearing about possible attempt to bribe jurors, or at least one juror. And I'm thinking to myself, what is my responsibility?
Right.
Obviously, we're not going to engage in that. And Teddy didn't even suggest that. But what's my responsibility? Thinking about it, I concluded that I need to report this to the court. So when the judge came on the bench, before we even started and pulled in the jury, I asked to approach with the prosecutor, and I told the judge exactly what happened. Judge's eyes opened, and he looked at the prosecutor. He said, well, what do you suggest we do? And I described the two young guys, and the prosecutor's first reaction was, well, we should call in jurors and interview them one by one. And he said, and the first juror we should call in is juror number 8. Juror number 8 happened to be a African-American woman. I looked at her and said, what are you, nuts?
Right.
What kind of racist comment is that?
Racist profiling,
Right,
everything.
right.
Yeah.
The judge looked at him like he was strange. The judge said, we're not calling anybody in.
If I were the prosecutor, with putting back my prosecutor hat from the early 90s, my thought would have been, we may have a bigger case here. I bet you the people he was laundering money for are so happy that he's not flipping on them that they're rewarding him by saying, we're going to take care of you. You're being loyal to us. We're going to be loyal to you. And we're getting these guys that are going to pay off a juror.
Well, I don't know what he was thinking. All I know is he had no suggestions worthwhile. And then at that moment, a thought came into my head. And I said, Judge, would you give me 10 minutes with my client? I think I have an idea. He says, okay. I walked my client outside. I said, look, you may think this is going well, but this is, and I love to use this phrase, weekend at Bernie's.
Yes.
I'm walking this corpse around the room. I'm beating up witnesses, but I believe that they've got a strong case, and they've got too many witnesses. I have an idea. What if you cooperated with the government and went through the process of trying to ferret out what really is going on. Because we don't know if these kids are full of it. We don't know if it's just a setup or maybe it's real. Why don't you do that? And in the meantime, we'll continue trying this case. It's a win-win. If somehow we pull it out and you're found not guilty, wonderful. If, on the other hand, you're found guilty and you help them ferret out a possible attempt to bribe jury, a sting operation, maybe at that point in time, you'll get a reduced sentence. You'll get some benefit for it.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win. And at first he thought about it. He wasn't particularly high on the idea, but we kept talking about it, and he finally decided, you know what? Yeah, maybe I will. So I go back in. I tell the judge and the prosecutor my idea. First, I tell the prosecutor. He wasn't at all interested in hearing about it. Why? His target was Teddy. All he cared about was convicting Teddy.
Yeah.
That's all he cared about.
And the government also doesn't like putting lay people undercover, putting them in harm's way. They're not properly trained to do something like that. So they get very skittish about that. But you're giving them a really good opportunity here to break another big, potentially large case here.
The judge seemed interested in it. We continued with the trial that day. And when the trial ended that day, I walked right over to the U.S. Attorney's office, went to see a particular U.S. attorney, a more senior person, assistant U.S. attorney who I knew, and I knew she would be receptive to this. And we talked about it for a while. We talked about the idea of creating a wall between her and the prosecutors prosecuting the case, and that she would bring in other agents to work with my client. And what was ultimately set up was, during the day, we're trying this case, fighting the government. The government's fighting us full scale. And every day at 5 o'clock, my client's leaving the courtroom and going to work as an undercover sting agent for the government.
Amazing. Amazing.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to see him at night and work with him at night.
Sure.
And he just couldn't wait to get out of there and go there. So the first thing they did, they came up with the idea of setting up a meeting with these kids at a Denny's.
So the note they gave him had a phone number?
Had a phone number.
So he was
called
able to
the phone
contact
number.
them.
They gave him a script to follow. And they told him he's got to tell them that he doesn't believe them. They've got to come up with some proof that they really have somebody on the jury. So they set up a meeting at a Denny's. And as it turns out, just like you see in the movies, apparently, they set up people at different tables, agents at different tables, and they gave him a cell phone that was actually a two-way radio as well. So not only did it record, it probably wasn't even a working phone, who knows?
Right.
It recorded what was being said at the table, but it also transmitted what was said at the table to the agents sitting around, because one of the things they wanted to make sure is there was no safety issue as well. And apparently the idea they came up with, now, this was in the middle of March. It was, for some reason, freezing in the courtroom. And as a result, and they couldn't control the temperature in the courtroom. So as a result, everybody on that jury was wearing either a sweater or a coat every day. It was something we talked about all the time. The jury even asked, Judge, can we turn up the heat? And they tried. Nothing would work.
Wow.
So the idea the agents came up with, he would be drinking, my client Teddy would be drinking a glass of water, and he would very ceremoniously drink the water and finish it, and then turn the glass over dramatically on the table. And the person on the jury, if there was a person on the jury that they would communicate with, would take off his or her sweater or jacket.
Oh, interesting.
And so the idea was they were going to create cameras, and they did, in the courtroom that morning and the night before. They had cameras in the ceiling. They even gave me a briefcase that had a camera on the side, a James Bond briefcase.
Right, and now you're actually a witness in this particular
Well, here's the
case.
problem. The way the briefcase was situated, it would see me, and I didn't want to be on it. I happened to have a young associate working with me in the case who is what we call a second chair.
Right.
And I always had him sitting to my right. Well, today I made him the first chair. So he was on the camera.
Well,
I did not want to be a witness
course,
or even
it's-
anybody to see me. So what happened is, lo and behold, Teddy goes ahead, drinks the water at some point in the morning, turns the cup over, and it's something, he did it in a way that was very dramatic. And we're looking, everybody's looking on that jury.
oh yeah.
And a young girl in the front row takes off her sweater immediately after it's turned
Amazing.
over.
Was it the African American woman?
No,
No,
not
of
at
course
all.
not.
I had no
Right.
reason to believe that.
Right.
Takes off her sweater, and she does it in a very dramatic fashion too, like a stripper almost. And now we have reason to believe she's the person on the jury. So Teddy, the trial goes on for a couple more days. We are literally fighting cats and dogs in the trial. And Teddy's going every night and meeting with the prosecutor and the agents, the other team, Team B. And I don't know exactly what's going on because maybe they're not telling him what they're planning. But one morning, I get a call early in the morning. It's from Teddy, like it's 7 in the morning. They arrested the girl and the 2 guys,
Oh yeah.
and they're being brought into court today. So, interesting. So that morning, I come to court, and normally what happens is the marshals will take a defendant up through inside into the courtroom, through, the back area.
Back corridor. Yeah.
Now, they had apparently, for some reason, and I still don't know why, walked that young juror down the same hallway to a different courtroom on the same floor, the same hallway that our courtroom was in, and that jurors were hanging around outside, and they see her in chains in custody.
Yeah. They
And-
probably, don't you think they wanted to send a message to the other jurors in case any of them were also involved?
It was so unusual. I've never seen that happen
Right.
before. I don't know the reason. I don't know if maybe the elevator was broken. I have no idea. All I know is now these jurors see what's going on. And then the case is going on in the morning for a while. And then there was no sequestering of the jurors. Apparently, the midday news reported her being arrested and the 2 guys being arrested for jury tampering and jury bribing.
Right. But yeah, the news was
And
right
the
there.
jurors saw that. Some
right.
of the jurors saw that.
Sure.
And it got reported to the bailiff that they saw that. And the bailiff reported it to the judge, and the judge told us. And so immediately I asked the court for a mistrial. The judge looked at me. Why do you want a mistrial?
Right.
How do I give you a mistrial? I said, Judge, think about this for a second. According to the news, that juror was bribed or attempted to be bribed to,
Fine. Not guilty.
well, we don't know not guilty,
Right.
but who's going to think the government bribed them?
Right. Of course.
The natural inclination is to believe it was the defense
Which is
that
a
bribed them.
negative inference towards
A
the
negative
defense.
inference. So as a result, Judge, we are already prejudiced in the eyes of the jury. And are we going to tell the jury it's a sting operation? The judge was very angry because we were already probably at that point about a week and a half, 2 weeks into the trial. And the judge didn't want to just declare a mistrial, which means a do-over. But he stormed back into his chambers, came back about 10, 15 minutes later, said, Mr. Nurek, I'm going to grant you a mistrial. And he granted a mistrial in the case.
Yeah, which means so that
You're back to square one.
start all over again.
Start all over again. But not then, okay? My client, meanwhile, is on bond. So then I meet with the government, and we work out a deal. Because of my client's great contribution to justice by ferreting out this attempt to bribe juries, They agreed to a deal that he got 5 years probation.
And he accepted that in a
Except
heartbeat.
that. And one of the reasons I think they went with the deal was not long before then was a very famous case of two major drug dealers in Miami. And it was later revealed that their acquittal was a result of the jury being bribed.
Right.
And it was a big scandal. In fact, if you remember, that was the case where the U.S. attorney was so upset and despondent, he went to a strip joint that night and bit a stripper,
Yes.
and then was fired by Janet Reno.
I remember that
Attorney
too.
General.
Yep. These
So,
crazy things.
Crazy things. You can't make this stuff up. And so anyway, they agreed. We went to a sentencing. He got 5 years probation. And the funny postscript to the story is this crazy situation was after he gets sentenced, he goes to meet with the prosecutor that he was working with. And she told me later, asked her, is there any way he could become an agent? An FBI agent?
I saw that
or
coming.
A DEA agent?
Come on, it's the
He
Cats are
loved it.
It's the Cats are Predator, that
Right,
movie all
right,
over
right.
again. They used him, and then he
her response was, I think your conviction might be a problem. So anyway,
Well, maybe he'll write a book about being an agent of some.
And-
You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427.
and you were telling us at the end of last episode about a what
The
was
pilot.
Pilot
Yeah.
who had a DUI, what I call FUI.
That's right.
Flying under the influence.
If
That
FUI
sounds amazing.
On his very first flight.
You got to tell us about that.
So yeah, it's a fun case. He was very young. He was about 28 years old, and he had wanted to be a pilot his whole life. So he had read about planes, and he would go to airports and watch them take off and land. And he just loved it. It was in his blood. He just couldn't wait to be a pilot. So he started taking lessons. And it was fortunate for him. He came from a really wealthy family. So he wasn't going to go be a commercial pilot for an airline like a Delta or United.
Right.
He was going to be a pilot on a private plane that his family bought for him to have his own business. So it was pretty cool, right?
What kind of plane was it?
This particular plane was a Lear 60.
So it was a jet.
A jet set up
Wow.
with 10 seats in it.
Wow.
And he finished his last lesson and got certified to be a pilot and was flying to pick up his first passengers that were chartering his plane. So he flies he kept his plane at Teterboro, which a lot of people know is the premier airport for the rich and famous who fly in and out to New York on their private plane.
I remember that was the airport mentioned in the Sully movie that they were trying to divert him to, but he couldn't make it.
Right, correct.
Right?
Yep, and it's where I met with Jeff Epstein many times because
really?
he kept one of his planes at the Teterboro Airport. It's very close to the city, and
Right.
all the private jets for the rich and famous fly in and out of there. So that's where this client's family kept their plane, and he was flying to pick up his first passengers on his very first commercial flight at Newark Airport, very close, not far at all. EWR is their initials. And as he takes off and he's heading there, he's on the radio, and you call in to tell the the headquarters that you're coming in, the air marshals and so forth. And so they are saying to him, "We don't see you. We don't see you. We don't see you on the radar. We can't see you on the radar." And he's like, "Well, I'm here. This is where I'm at." And like, "We still don't see you. We still don't see you." So they had taught him, and again, he just finished his lessons literally that day with his instructor when he got certified. They always tell you as a pilot in training, if you get disoriented, get your plane on the ground. That's the first thing you're supposed to do. Now, he's still about 4 minutes out from the airport from landing, where he's set to land, but they don't see him on the radar. They don't know what's going on. So he's like, okay, I'm going to get I see the airport out there way ahead of me, a couple miles out. I'm going to land the plane. And next thing you know, he looks out his window, and there are 4 F-15s surrounding him.
Oh my God.
And he is freaking out. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. So he just remembers his training, get the plane on the ground, get the plane on the ground. So he finally gets to the airport. It takes a couple more minutes. He lands the plane, and now he's being attacked. The four F-15s take off, and four huge blacked out SUVs are racing him down the runway, and they're actually kind of squeezing him off, and he freaks out, and he drives the plane, steers it off of the runway and into a big ditch. He hits a berm. The plane doesn't flip or anything, but it basically crashes the plane. Now, you're probably wondering, why was there such a major reaction
Right.
with, sending four F-15s, these big SUVs attacking him?
And this was before 9/11?
That's why this occurred September 21st, 2001.
So right
10
after
days after
the
9/11.
Oh my God.
There was a heightened sense of fear and
Sure.
concern and security around the country, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning he was flying out of Teterboro, going to New Jersey, which is the whole area, obviously, where 9/11 occurred, as well as the third flight that went in D.C. But this was a very, very, very scary. Everyone was on pins and needles during this time. So when that Newark airport couldn't find him on the radar, they issued a warning, and the F-15s were alerted. And so my client gets out. He runs into this berm, and he gets arrested for DUI. Now, why DUI?
Yeah, how did that happen?
Well, number one, he was so freaked out he peed his pants. Right? So they see the guy peed his pants. He's slurring his speech, and he's very wobbly on his feet. And the witnesses say he reeked of alcohol. He smelled of alcohol. So they arrest him for DUI. He didn't give a breath test. They didn't take blood from him, so they didn't have a blood alcohol content reading on him.
There weren't state troopers or police equipped for that,
Correct.
right?
Usually that's on
They
the
thought
side.
they
of-
had a terrorist, not a
Yes.
drunk.
Right. So they didn't call the DUI experts with
Right.
with the intoxilizer in their trunk to test him. Yeah, so he was able to not even be asked for that test, and plus they felt like we had tons of evidence on him.
Right.
So what happens is it was such a busy time in the prosecutor's office with post 9/11 that the case kind of slipped through the cracks. But they never made a plea offer because just kind of public policy.
Right.
We need to send a message that this cannot be tolerated.
Flying a plane while intoxicated.
Right,
My
and it
God.
didn't turn out to be a terrorist act, but they really wanted to
was
send a
dangerous.
dangerous and serious
Sure.
message, right? They didn't know really what his intentions could have been. So they didn't make a plea offer. We had no choice to go to trial. It's like what we just talked about when I asked you, why did your client go to trial? There's a lot of reasons.
Sometimes they're not making any kind of offer,
Right.
so you are forced to go to
And
trial.
that was the case here. The government want to make a real statement about this and send a message to people, to pilots. And,
Right.
Well, because they were so busy at this time with everything going on in New York and New Jersey and that whole area post 9/11, very close shortly after 9/11, prosecutor didn't work the case up properly. We're in trial. I had two witnesses on there that they never deposed. They didn't even ask me. I guess they didn't have the time. They'd ask me, what are these two witnesses going to talk about, guy? Give us a heads up. Well, my first witness was the flight instructor, the guy that my client took all his lessons from. And I said to him, did you meet with my client that day? Yes. Why? He said, well, it was his final lesson, and then he got certified that day and took his first flight. I said, well, what's the protocol for that? He said, well, went through the lessons, so on and so on. He goes for his first flight. I watch him inspect the plane before getting in it, and then I check his flight bag to make sure he has his maps, his headphones, and all his gear. And I said, okay, did you look in that flight bag? Yeah, of course I looked in it. Was there any alcohol in there? No alcohol whatsoever. Okay. When you talked to him, was he slurring his speech? Definitely not. Did he have an odor of alcohol? Absolutely not. Did you see the plane? He said, yeah, I actually was the one who delivered the plane to him, and there was no alcohol on that plane at all. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. You're released. Government was kind of dumbfounded. They didn't know where to go with this. They figured, we've learned in law school, don't ask a question you don't know the answer
Right.
to. It's a, criminal defense 101, actually any trial attorney 101, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. So the government didn't ask him any questions. Put on a second witness who was actually a mechanic as well as an insurance adjuster for plane crashes. Right, and this guy gets on the stand, and because it was at an airport, it was it was recorded on video, the whole incident. Right, so I show him the video of it, and I say, what's happening over here next to the plane? He says, oh, the hydraulics are squirting out from the hydraulic section of both wheels that came down when he hit the berm. And then I said, well, do you see the video where my client's getting out of the plane? Where is he in relation to the hydraulic spray? He said, well, it's hitting his right arm. It's all over his right arm. So I said, could you describe to me what the hydraulics smell like? He says, it's basically pure alcohol, reeks of alcohol. So I said, thank you. I said, no, you've done a lot of accident investigations. Yeah, of course I have. I do. That's what my expertise is for the insurance department. So I said, well, what do you see in the survivors of airplane accidents as far as how they act immediately after? He said, well, usually they're scared to death. Disoriented. Their speech is, they're panicked. Their speech isn't their normal speech pattern. So have you ever seen anyone pee themselves? He said, half the people I've seen come off of an airplane crash have peed themselves.
Wow.
I said, thank you, no more questions. The prosecutor tried to rehabilitate a little bit, didn't get anywhere with it. It wasn't my quickest not guilty verdict, but it was about a 30, 40-minute not guilty verdict.
Wow.
So then my client said, I asked him, you're going to keep flying? He said, no. He's like, I never want to fly a plane ever again. And he never did.
So I guess both our clients were free to go for different reasons.
That's
My
right.
guy was on probation, but never a day in jail, and your client was
so the
free
FUI
man.
was a free to go.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
We're really, we're lucky. We have such a great career because we get to meet people that are interesting and go through really difficult, scary times. But it always keeps us on our toes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a wonderful story. Yeah. So, we're going to be doing an episode again for our number 5. And that episode is going to be a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about misidentification cases. And, it's been proven that, the majority of wrongful convictions, which are overturned as a result of DNA evidence, which didn't exist, prior to a certain point in time, are cases of misidentification. Where witnesses say or victims say they identify the person, and it turns out it's the misidentification. Person wasn't there. And it's a shame that those things happen. And misidentification is a serious problem in cases that are just simply ID cases. So we're going to be talking about that, some examples, and what's going on with that right now. So for our next episode, stay tuned. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, you're free to go.
Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Mark and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561-843-1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fromston and Mark Nurek and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.